You feel what others feel. You walk into a room and the air tastes like someone else's grief. You pick up a joke that falls flat and carry the shame as if it belongs to you. You listen to a partner's complaint and the heat of their anger settles in your chest. You call this empathy and you wear it like a badge. But beneath the badge is a wound, the pattern of the scapegoat, the person who learned early that their role in the family was to carry what no one else would carry. That role becomes a life script. You absorb other people's emotional messes and call it compassion. This dynamic begins in childhood, not as a decision but as necessity. In a household that cannot name its pain, someone has to hold it. A parent refuses grief or blames the world for every problem. A sibling acts out and the adults look the other way. The child who soothes the chaos, who smiles to calm a fight, or who takes blame to stop the storm, becomes the scapegoat. The family system gives them an identity, the one who suffers, the one who keeps peace at the cost of self. They learn a survival skill and then mistake it for virtue. As an adult, that survival skill shows up as a reflex. You sense tension and move toward it. You hear passive anger and begin to explain away the target of the anger to diffuse it. You stay in relationships where your needs go unmet because leaving would cause pain to someone else. You carry guilt for things you did not cause. You forgive betrayals and keep quiet to preserve someone else's image. You become a sponge and your skin thins under the soak. Psychology calls this role scapegoating within family systems theory. Families are systems that assign roles to stabilize themselves. The scapegoat's role relieves pressure on the rest. The system avoids looking inward by projecting dysfunction onto one child. The others get to be normal. The scapegoat learns to perform remorse and self-sacrifice. The performance brings temporary calm. The child receives attention and identity, which feels better than being invisible. Over time, the child equates value with suffering. They trade presence for usefulness. The wound operates through three linked mechanics: absorption, validation by suffering, and boundary erosion. First, absorption. You pick up moods like stray cats. You notice the tremor in someone's voice and think it is your failure. You feel other people's shame and try to erase it. This is not imagination. Your nervous system mirrors others' states. Mirror neurons and learned attunement make you sensitive, but sensitivity without limits becomes reactive. You react to moods that do not belong to you and try to fix them. Second, validation by suffering. Because you received attention when you gave in, you learned that pain equals worth. You sit at the table of conflict and accept blame because blame brings you significance. You perform the role precisely because the family praised your sacrifice. Adults who needed a target coped by offloading pain onto you. That attention, however twisted, taught a core belief. My value rises as my pain increases. As an adult, you keep hurting yourself to prove you matter. Third, boundary erosion. You did not learn how to say no. Saying no meant punishment in childhood. Silence, withdrawal, anger. You trained yourself to anticipate the emotional fallout of refusal. As an adult, you stand at a threshold and watch someone else storm toward it. You think, I must stop them, so you step in and take the blow. You confuse fixing with responsibility. You think if you do not carry it, the system will collapse and you will be blamed for the collapse. So you keep absorbing until you forget which emotions are yours. This pattern lives in daily scenes. A friend calls at 3 a.m. to unload a crisis. Your body tightens and you get on the phone. You cancel your plans for a partner who demands attention to avoid conflict. A colleague dumps emotional labor on you and you carry it so others can maintain a polished image. Each time you step in, you strengthen the script. Help equals love, pain equals proof. The world trains you to confuse rescue with identity. The paradox is that your compassion becomes a cover for control, both theirs and yours. Others come to rely on you. Their avoidance becomes habitual because you will absorb the cost. You gain usefulness and social approval, but your needs fade. You are rewarded for losing yourself. That reward system locks you into the loop. The family or the relationship works because you do the heavy lifting, but you grind down. A clear example, a parent who refuses therapy uses the child as a human therapist. The child learns to listen and to deflect. As an adult, that child becomes the friend everyone unloads on. They can name feelings, offer solutions, and be the calm center. People prefer relating to the person who will not push back. That lack of pushback preserves old dynamics. You get the role of the fixer, and others keep their privileges of avoidance. The system wins, you lose. Because you have equated suffering with identity, self-care feels like betrayal. Setting a boundary feels like abandoning someone to their collapse. You anticipate that if you choose yourself, the other person will fall apart, and your mind plays the tape of catastrophe. You feel responsible for outcomes beyond your control. You measure compassion by how much you sacrifice. This internal rule makes the wound self-perpetuate. Breaking the script requires 2 shifts. Name the pattern and practice non-destructive boundaries. Naming is simple and hard. You say out loud, I took on that role to survive, I no longer need it. Naming interrupts the family system because it challenges the myth that only one person must carry pain. You reveal that the family could have chosen different support. That disclosure threatens the status quo, so expect pushback. The family may call you selfish, they may escalate drama. You must prepare. The system will try to maintain its pattern. Boundaries are the practical work. They are not walls to punish others, they are lines to keep you whole. Boundaries look like small, rehearsed phrases. I can listen for 30 minutes, then I must rest. I will not take calls after midnight. I can give support, but I will not carry responsibility for your decisions. These statements sound simple, but they are revolutionary inside a scapegoat wound. The first times you name limits, your body will flood with guilt. That flood mirrors the old panic when you learn to absorb. You will feel like a failure. That sensation is not truth, it is conditioning. Practical steps help. Start with mapping. Write down situations where you absorbed someone's emotion. Note the cost: lost sleep, cancelled plans, resentment. Track how you felt after. Seeing the pattern in ink removes the myth that these episodes are random acts of kindness. They repeat because you trained them to repeat. Then rehearse small refusals in safe places. Tell a trusted friend you will stop taking late-night crisis calls. Then follow through. The first boundary may bring testing. People will push. That push is not evidence you are wrong. It is evidence that your pattern worked for them. They now adapt. You will also need to practice self-authorship, rest, nourishment, reflective time. You learn to find identity outside yourself. Reclaiming it means investing in activities that define you beyond rescue. You will learn how to be in a room and not be the cleanup crew. You will feel awkward. That awkwardness is growth. Therapy works because the scapegoat wound responds to safe containment and reframing. A therapist can validate that your care came from necessity, not virtue. They teach language to name limits and to separate responsibility. You may use family systems therapy to shift your family's script, or trauma-informed therapy to heal the early wounds that wired you to absorb. Both approaches help you practice new behaviors in the presence of support. There is a moral truth to hold. Empathy without boundaries becomes harm. Your capacity to feel is a gift, but leaving that gift unprotected makes it a burden. You do not owe your safety to others. You can care without solving. You can witness pain without carrying its weight. Compassion that refuses to preserve your life is not moral heroism. It is martyrdom. Realignment will change relationships. Some people will step up to their own feelings, others will leave because they depended on your absorbency to avoid pain. That departure feels like betrayal, but it is freedom. You will be healthier. You will have fewer resentments. Your acts of support will come from choice, not compulsion. Over time, people will respect you more because you show you value yourself. This shift also corrects generational patterns. If you raise children without wearing the scapegoat wound as your identity, you teach them how to name and manage emotions. They do not grow into role carriers. They learn that feelings belong to their owners, and that asking for help is a skill that requires reciprocity. If this resonates, you might be in the middle of the story. You might recognize the tight knot of guilt that appears when you say no. You might already be mapping scenes where you absorbed pain that never belonged to you. That awareness is the first step toward change. It proves you can see the system. You are not trapped in it forever. For more analytical breakdowns of the wounds that shape behavior and practical steps to rewrite them, like, comment, and subscribe to The Fictionist. You learn to be porous. As a child, you could not refuse the family's emotional weather. You felt the anger that belonged to your father, the shame that belonged to your sister, the grief that belonged to the house. You became the container. Over time, that survival skill turned into a flaw. You stopped noticing where you ended and other people began. That inability to tell your feelings from someone else, becomes the core cost of the scapegoat wound. The difference between empathy and fusion is small and decisive. Empathy means you notice someone's distress and you name it. You say, "You sound upset." Fusion means you feel the distress as if it is yours. The line between noticing and owning blurs. You do not just recognize another person's fear, you internalize it. Your nervous system reacts, your heartbeat changes. You start rehearsing solutions for problems you did not create. This pattern makes relationships complicated. You show up as helper and as patient. You become available for crisis and unavailable for care. Developmentally, this pattern grows from the same mechanism that builds attachment. Children who must soothe a parent to feel safe learn a skill that adults call emotional attunement. Mirror neurons amplify that attunement. You sense micro shifts in tone. You respond before words form. That quick response worked when your family relied on it for stability, but the adult world exploits that speed without giving back the safety the child once received. You give presence. You rarely get reciprocity. A typical scene will explain how this plays out. Someone you love calls at midnight to describe a fight. You pick up because you cannot stand the idea of their pain. You stay on the phone until dawn. You cancel your plans. During the call, you pass details, propose actions, and take blame from a distance. You fall asleep on the couch, exhausted. The next day, the person feels better and moves on. No one asked how you slept. No one checked if you needed help. The incident repeats. You hold crisis after crisis. You collect problems like trophies. Your calendar fills with other people's emergencies. Your own life waits. This pattern produces 3 predictable outcomes. First, depletion. You burn energy on other people's stress. You have less left for work, for creative projects, for rest. Second, blurred self-identity. If you always play the rescuer, you forget what you want. Your wants become stranger to you. You might answer fine to the question, "How are you?" because you lack a habit of naming your inner state without immediate adjustment. Third, codependent cycles. People come to expect your availability. They stop developing their own coping skills. The relationship becomes unequal. Their growth stalls while you carry the weight. Boundaries feel like betrayal. Saying no triggers old alarms. As a child, a refusal might have led to punishment, to withdrawal, to anger. Your nervous system remembers the price. So when you try to hold a limit, When you tell a partner you will not answer texts after 10 p.m., your body floods with guilt. You imagine calamity. You rehearse all the reasons you should instead step in. Those mental tapes come from the system that once depended on your absorbency. The family needed a scapegoat. It trained you to obey that role. Now the world asks for a different skill: selective presence. Selective presence means you choose what to absorb. It does not mean you stop caring. It means you get to decide which problems you will hold and which problems you will not. For example, you can listen to a friend's complaint for 20 minutes and then suggest a plan that moves them toward action. You can say, "I can hear how raw this is. I can sit with you until dinner. After that, I have to rest." That sentence splits support from engulfment. It keeps you whole. Projective identification explains why release meets resistance. In a family system, the scapegoat receives the projected pain of others. That pain feels familiar. If you remove yourself from the role, the system will press harder. Siblings might escalate drama. Partners might accuse you of selfishness. Co-workers will dump extra work. The behavior will feel like punishment. In fact, you are meeting the system's need. The system prefers you to carry the load rather than change. This pushback produces anxiety that masquerades as proof you must return to the old role. Practical skills reduce the blur. The first skill is labeling. When someone unloads, name what you hear without absorbing it. Say, "You sound angry," not "I am angry." The second skill is timing. Set a limit on emotional labor. Offer a defined window. "I can take this now for 30 minutes. The third skill is delegation. If someone needs ongoing support, direct them to appropriate help. Therapy, a support group, a crisis line. You can care and insist that others step up. The fourth skill is recovery. After you participate, schedule restorative time. If you listen to trauma, follow with a short walk, a warm drink, or a check-in with a friend who understands your limits. Boundaries also need rehearsal. They will feel awkward at first because you trained for the opposite response. Practice small refusals in safe context. Say no to a minor request. Notice the body sensations. Notice the guilt. Keep the boundary steady. The body learns new patterns through repetition. Each successful boundary reduces the shock of the next one. Stories show the cost of delayed change. Consider a woman who becomes the emotional anchor for her partner. He expects calm and explanation. When she tries to insist on her needs, time with friends, therapy, the partner grows hostile. He calls her cold. She slides back to overfunction to preserve the relationship. The pattern repeats until she collapses under burnout. In therapy, she learns to separate responsibility. She keeps presence but stops doing his emotional processing. He must learn his limits or lose the relationship. That last part is hard. People prefer the comfort of old script to the pain of change. You will face grief when you stop carrying. The relief of less weight sits beside sadness for relationships that no longer survive your new limits. Some people who relied on your absorbency will leave. That loss hurts because attachment ties safety to your old role. Yet loss does not equal failure. It rounds the cost of codependency into honest trade-offs. Your life for their avoidance. Choose the balance you want. Cultural myths make the wound worse. We praise self-sacrifice. We label people who say no as selfish. Media and moral language honor martyrdom. All of that feels familiar because the family praised your sinking. You learned to equate survival with virtue. The corrective is moral recalibration. Caring well does not mean carrying harm. Saying no can mean love. You practice a new ethic. Preserve yourself so you can help without vanishing. Therapy helps because it gives a mirror. A skilled therapist will show where feelings begin and where they end. They will help you trace the origin of the absorption reflex. They will rehearse boundaries in role play so the nervous system learns new responses. They will hold you when family pressure mounts. That containment matters because the initial role formed to contain others. To dissolve it, you need replacement containment. This work rewrites generational patterns. If you stop absorbing without explanation, you may repeat harm. If you stop absorbing and teach others to hold their feelings, you shift the script. Children raised in the new pattern learn that feelings belong to the person who feels them, and that asking for help involves reciprocity. They learn the language of limits rather than martyrdom. You must also grieve the identity you built around being needed. You might have defined your worth by how much you could carry. Letting that go will create a sense of emptiness at first. Fill that space with choices that reflect your values, projects, friendships, creative work. Over time, your self-definition will expand beyond rescue. You will find that giving from abundance feels different from giving from debt. The moral core is simple. You did not choose this wound. You learned it to survive. Now you can unlearn it on purpose. You can keep your empathy and add structure. You can be present without losing yourself. That balance makes your compassion sustainable. If this resonates, try one practice today. Name an instance in the last week when you absorbed someone else's feeling instead of naming it. Write down what you did and how it cost you. Then choose one small boundary you can set this week, a time limit, a no-call hour, a delegated referral. Rehearse the line, say it once, and notice what happens. For more practical analysis on wounds that shape behavior and clear steps to change them, consider liking, commenting, and subscribing to The Fictionist.